Welcome back, guys, to my Stand review series where I'm reviewing The Stand from 2020, the latest show based on Stephen King's novel of the same name. Currently, my favorite horror book of all time and my favorite book of all time, period. Read it recently and decided to review the series that's streaming on Prime Video right now. So, we're getting into episode 5. I'm going to be doing the same thing as I did in the previous episode reviews, one by one, where I talk about the episode itself and then go on to book comparisons, whether what's similar and different from what happened in the show compared to the book. So, in this episode, Julie Lowry was introduced in the previous episode, episode 4, as the crazy girl who is also featured in the book, who attacks Tom and Nick in that furniture store, and we get a lot more of her, I should say. Her interaction with at the beginning of the episode with Dana, because Dana keeps mentioning Randall Flagg, and keeps talking about Randall Flagg, and you're not supposed to talk about Randall Flagg because Randall Flagg is everywhere, and he's like the devil, like overhearing everywhere. He's like hiding in the shadows and all that stuff. We get a lot of New Vegas in the show, obviously, with the title of the episode being called shoot Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. There we go. Had a little mind blank there. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I have never seen Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, actually. Never seen that film. It is on my watch list. But Fear and Loathing in New Vegas is like the theme of this one. So we get everything that was Vegas featured in the book brought to life in this episode. So we have Randall Flagg in his full evil mode, you could say. And like I said, Julie Lowry in the show definitely seems to be paid a lot more attention to than she was in the book. She's kind of like thrown in here and there throughout the book. Why am I talking about the book? But that's later on in the review. We're talking about the episode right now. Lloyd, he hasn't shown up in a couple episodes, but he shows up in this one, and he is now all pimped out. And I actually find it kind of comical. Where he was when he was taken into prison, and he was borderline becoming a cannibal, and he was like eating off of like rats and stuff like that, to going into this literal like fedora wearing gold tooth, like Vegas showboy kind of guy who like starts doing like power metal vocals where he's like Vegas and shit like that or whatever. It's just so laughable. He pulls it off well, and the actor Nat Wolff is actually a really good actor, and he's obviously doing exactly what he's told to do by the director, and he pulls it off. He delivers in spades, but his character is so goofy, like it just the level of who he was to who he became, sorry, and that whole that whole transformation is really funny. I like how they drop Tom Jones. It's not unusual to have fun with anyone, and then like they do a lot of soundtracks. The soundtrack is great in this show. I've loved every song that they've decided to include, and with the whole Vegas theme, they definitely hand selected a really good soundtrack to really display what they were going for, and I loved everything that had to do with the Vegas theme. I really like Julie Lowry's character and the actress who portrays her as well. She's who she was in the book. You just get a lot more of her, and they focus on her a lot more. And she's great. I mean, in the book, she's like this 17-year-old runaway, but she's very promiscuous, and in the book, it's creepy because she's 17 years old and she's coming on to whoever the hell she wants, basically. And in this one, she seems a lot more like a full-fledged, like, mid-20s girl who's just, wants to fuck everybody, pretty much. And she goes after Lloyd, and she continuously fucks Lloyd, and she's, like, snorting coke, and she's just that girl that you would expect to be, like, the wild child Except the loony bin wild child that you don't want to, put a gun in her hands because she'll just start shooting everybody. Um, like I said, I really like what they did with the Vegas theme, and I like the relationship that's going on with Harold and Nadine. Harold is starting to not like Nadine's ways, especially shooting the one guy. I forget his name, but the guy she shot in episode 4 at the end of it was Harold's friend, and Harold's not taking kindly to that. So he's following her because she's one of the only people giving him like kind attention, especially sexual attention mixed in with the kind attention. So he's that kind of guy that is, gonna be suckered into that, for lack of a better word. I mean, he's definitely like the guy that's like prone to loneliness and stuff like that. I like. Well, here's the thing. The biggest thing in the middle of this episode, which happened in the book again, is when Franny invites Harold to dinner, and her purpose of inviting Harold to dinner, because she's so friendly with Harold when she's never been in this show at all, and she's so fake about it, but it's so blatantly fake. And even Harold catches on to it, and I'm like, well, obviously he would. First of all, Harold's a really smart guy, as kind of twisted and warped he is in his mind, and evil thoughts that he has. He's very smart, so there's no way he wasn't going to catch on to Franny's shenanigans. But she wanted to invite him over for dinner so that Larry Underwood could go break into Harold's house and investigate for what Franny says she doesn't even know. She doesn't have a motive necessarily other than Harold's weird. That's her motive to ask Larry to break into Harold's house, is that Harold's weird and I think he's hiding something. So I'm going to invite Harold to dinner and pretend to be his best friend in the world and even flirt with him a little bit, like low key. And Larry, I want you to break into his house and see if you see anything suspicious. And I don't know, I didn't like. I kind of like looked down on Franny for kind of making that decision. Like, it seemed a little extreme, especially for her manipulation on the whole thing and just how fake she was being to Harold. Like, it just seemed unnecessary. There probably were better ways to like investigate Harold. Maybe like hang out with him more, try to get into his house without breaking in, you know what I mean? Like, go, find a reason to go over or something like that. But just this whole break-in situation, like, you're kind of being as bad as he is now, and two wrongs don't make a right. And it's too much. You're being as bad as the guy you're after, who you think is suspicious or bad. So I found that meh. It was what it was. In the book, again, it didn't play out that way. There's also a scene where Nadine goes to Larry's house before he breaks into Harold's house, and she basically is just throwing herself at him because it's weird too, the way they did it in the show. She was after Harold, but she didn't want to have sex with Harold because she was saving herself for Randall Flagg. But then when Harold kind of distances himself from her because she shot his friend, and because Franny invited him to dinner, and Franny is the love of his life, apparently, so she's kind of like, okay, Nadine is going to take a sidestep now. She's on the back burner. I'll deal with her later. Nadine all of a sudden just goes to throw her pussy at Larry, and it's kind of unlike her character. But she does it, and she's now. Larry didn't go for it, obviously. He's like, what are you doing? You're coming off way too strong, and, I don't want you to regret this tomorrow, so no thanks. I don't think you're in your right headspace, kind of thing. But then we got Harold in a really awkward dinner situation with Franny and Stu, and he gets all, emotional, you could say, and on like creep level 11 kind of thing. But obviously he figures out that something's suspicious, and then he goes home, and by the end of the episode, it shows that he knows somebody was in his house, but he doesn't know who. He's assuming Larry probably, but Larry wasn't caught. He just notices on a chessboard that the chess pieces are not in the way he left them because he's very OCD and knows how he leaves things behind. So he's on suspicion mode, but he doesn't exactly know like who broke in or what the exact situation was. The actor who plays Harold too, he's really giving me a lot of vibes of Penguin from Gotham, like the show Gotham. The guy who plays Penguin is like the skinny, like creepy serial killer kind of looking dude, and Harold really in his mannerisms reminds me of that actor who played Penguin, and I really like that. And then we have on our final scene, Dana is invited to the back room where Randall Flagg basically, like his penthouse, you could say, in this Vegas suite, and he's kind of interrogating her because there's this whole spy situation where I mentioned in the last review they sent a bunch of spies to Vegas, including Dana being one of them, and Randall Flagg knows that Dana's a spy because he has his like psychic abilities, and he has the suspicion that there's three spies. He just can't signal out the one who's played by Tom Cullen, or who is the third spy was Tom Cullen, but for some reason he can't sense Tom Cullen. This plays out in the book too, but he calls her to the back room. He knows she's a spy. He knows that Judge something, I forget her name, was the other spy, and he can't pinpoint the third spy, and he's basically interrogating Dana for it, until she kind of like basically refuses to give him the answer, and she just smashes a beer bottle and slits her throat open and basically kills herself before he can torture her for any more information, kind of thing. And then basically after that, the episode ends off with Harold using a lot of surveillance, which he ended up putting a little camera into the eye of a little teddy bear in Stu and Franny's room, which is extremely creepy. But also he set up cameras all around his house, so he figured out that it was Larry who broke into his house. So he's using a lot of surveillance. This series takes place in modern day in 2020 when it was produced. So this is supposed to be a much more advanced and up-to-date version compared to the 1990 book. So there's a lot of changes technology-wise, kind of thing. But that's how the episode ends, and they do a lot of good with the changes, and I like how they modernize it. It's definitely a very well-made show. But there's things that they half-ass, and I'll be getting into it now that I'm going to be talking to book comparisons. The biggest one, huge one that I want to start is that interrogation scene with Dana. In the book, that is one of the best parts of the book and one of the most intense parts of the book. First of all, he starts like floating because he can levitate, and he like whips Dana right through the glass of that penthouse suite, and she goes right through, and she cuts her throat with a piece of glass. Like right before she's about to die. She doesn't just break a bottle and slit her throat. And there's a whole interrogation with her. And not just the interrogation, there's a lot more backstory that they skipped, because she was having a relationship with Lloyd, the prisoner who was taken under Randall Flagg's wing, the guy who went all like fedora pimp mode with the gold tooth and power metal vocals. In the book, he just kind of stayed this crazy, like, redneck, kind of, burglar, kind of, not burglar, like, criminal. Like, he was just a criminal throughout the entire thing. He was taken under Randall Flagg's wing, but he was never made into, like, a celebrity character kind of thing. He was fucking Dana. Yeah, but Dana was fucking him out of pity because she was a spy. She wasn't, like, enjoying it or anything. In this episode, he doesn't fuck Dana at all. He just fucks Julie Lowry, who's the crazy girl, who in the book never has sex with Lloyd at all. I think maybe he tries to come onto her once, but she denies him, and he's like one of the only guys that she denies. But But yeah, like it never. There's no relationship with her and him in the book, but there is a big one with Dana, and there's a lot of backstory with Dana that they just completely skipped. So I found from Dana being introduced as a spy in the Vegas scenario to her having this interrogation, which is a huge, not only important but very like deep, like important and big part of the book, like climactic. It doesn't happen at the end, but a big like escalating point. I can't find the word for it right now, but a big plot detail. Like it's very in depth, and they really squandered that. They could have done a lot more. And then there's another character that's not talked about so far anyway, named Lucy. And Lucy was another woman who Larry met up with throughout his adventure to Boulder with Nadine. And Lucy was a character that Nadine was always jealous of. So a big reason why Nadine threw herself at Larry in the book was because this character Lucy and Larry were having a relationship, and Nadine felt like Lucy was like getting in the way, and that's why Nadine had this huge bout of jealousy. Whereas in this show, they kind of just half-ass it with this. She's getting annoyed with Harold fucking off, so she's like, "Oh, I need somebody," and throws herself at Larry, which doesn't make any sense with the plot of the story though, because she specifically in the book and in the show said that she can't have sex with Harold because she's saving herself for Randall. And then when Harold is like, "No, like I'm busy with Franny right now," she's like, "Okay, I changed my mind. I'm just gonna go fuck Larry." So they changed that, but it doesn't really go with the theme of the book or where the book was going for with that. And I can understand why they didn't want to include Lucy, because, you know, you can't detail every single character in the book. There's so many in this freaking book. It's huge. But it kind of took away from the logic of the plot, in my opinion. Anyway, and then, like I mentioned already, Lloyd turning into this like kingpin of Vegas. I didn't picture him that way in the book. He's hilarious. He's a great actor. He pulls it off well, but it's just really funny and really it goes goofy mode with how far he goes. But but like I said, he pulls it off well. And and then also at the end of the episode, I forgot to mention Mother Abigail disappears. She runs away and just leaves a note, just like she did in the book. And one thing I don't remember, I might want to be corrected on this one, but in this episode, she's very against the spy thing. She tells Nick that like she's super disappointed that he agreed to send spies, and that these people shouldn't have been sent at all. But I forget how she stood in the book, whether she was for it or against it. It's not recollecting with me because I saw it on the episode and I'm like, did she in the book was she against it too, or did she advocate for it? Because I don't remember exactly if she told Nick that she was against it or for it. But in this episode, it was definitely made clear that she was against it, and maybe they're gonna show that potentially it was a big reason for her, leaving the note and going wherever she went. In the book, she went to, find God in the forest kind of thing and find the messages that she needed in peace and away from noise kind of thing. But we'll see how it goes in the show. But I don't want to ramble too much more. Like I said, I'm enjoying this show for what it is. It's doing great things, like really good things, and then it's botching some things that I wish that they could have paid a little bit more attention to, just because of how much I appreciated things in the book. And the biggest one is that confrontation between Dana and Randall in the book. That's like probably in my top 3 favorite moments in the entire book. So, like I said, I recommend reading the book whether you've watched the show or not. And I hope you've watched at least one show or read the book if you're watching these reviews, because this is all spoilers. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. Subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back with more when I can. Check out my other content, and stay up to date with the stand review. I'll be reviewing the 90s series when I get to it, but as of now, we're getting through the 2020 Whoopi Goldberg The Stand modernized series. So until next review, take care and cheers.